This is an interview with Daniel Wolfe, the Hampton Inn, Tarrytown, New York, February 4th, 2003, approximately 9 a.m. The interviewers are Michael Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Yeah. My name is Daniel Wolfe. I was born in the Bronx, New York, on April 16th, 1930.
Okay. Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I was drafted.
You drafted, okay. Could you tell me your pre-war service education?
Yes, I graduated high school, and at that time I had no intention of going to college. I had to go to work. My father hardly worked. So I supplemented the family income with a meager job. It was post-World War II. It was post-World War II recession. And then my employer accused me of fooling around with the girls in the office. And I said to him, well, if I'm fooling around with the girls in the office, you know what you could do about it. He knew what he could do about it. He fired me. So I got another job. I worked as a switch tender and brakeman on the New York Central Railroad in the freight yard. And the pay was phenomenal for that time. But from there, I was drafted.
Okay. What branch of service were you?
I was in the infantry.
Okay. When did you enter service?
September 27th, 1951.
Okay. Where did you receive your basic training? You should tell us something about.
My basic training was at Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, which was very much like Korea, very hilly, the Blue Mountains of Pennsylvania. The cadre were all Korean veterans, and it was a rugged basic training, but I thought it prepared us well for what we were going into.
Mm-hmm. What kind of specific training did you have that prepared you so well?
Yeah, well, it was 16 weeks of infantry training. Mm-hmm. Other branches will have 8 weeks, and then they'll go into the medics or some other branch of service. But we had 16 weeks of infantry training. So that was my MOS was 4705, I believe it was, a military occupation specialty, which was a rifleman. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. And from after basic training, we received FECOM orders, that's Far East Command, and we got on a train at New York Central Railroad, or Pennsylvania Railroad, and the train took us to Seattle, Washington. And we waited for a boat, and the boat came. It was the Simon Buckner, and the boat took us to Japan. Japan, they took everything we had away from us. They replaced our rifle. They took our winter uniforms away. We were given fatigues. This was in April. So we had our fatigues, our rifle, and some other garments I don't recall, and we were taken to Yokohama. At Yokohama, we had the Sedato and Manamori waiting for us, the boat, which took us to Korea. On the way, I remember there was an announcement on the boat saying, attention, attention, there will be a firing exercise by the crew. And a plane came by pulling a sleeve, a long sleeve. And we could tell where the bursts landed because you could see the burst, you could also see the traces. Nowhere near the sleeve. And one of the fellows said, gee, I hope these guys aren't going with us. Anyway, we arrived in Korea and we were taken to what was called a Repo Depot company in Seoul. And we saw the men coming back. They were going back to the U.S. And boy, they were a jolly bunch of fellows. And they were in uniforms. I never saw anything like that in the movies. Shabby uniforms. And here we were with brand new fatigues, dark green fatigues. And I said to myself, gee, I'd like to have my fatigues reach that point. Anyway, we were taken on a train to the 3rd Division Battalion headquarters, 15th Regiment. And we arrived there in a pouring rain. And I remember a colonel coming out with a helmet liner with 15th Regiment applique on it, and a poncho, standing there in the rain, but the rain was falling off and we were getting soaked. And he said, "Welcome to the 15th Regiment, the can-do regiment," he said. "In this regiment we don't say, 'Yes, sir,' we say, 'Can-do, sir. And if you're especially on the ball, you will say, 'Have done, sir.'" I said to myself, "Oh God, what am I getting into?" And trucks came, and they took us to a point, and from there, we marched, and there we were, on the MLR, the main line of resistance, which was composed of bunkers and a continuous trench going from the East Coast to the West Coast. Continuous trench line with bunkers. Bunker was a hole in the ground with a roof on top and logs. And I went in there and I said, "God," a sergeant met me and showed me my bunker. And I said, "God, is that where I'm going to sleep?" I came from a very modest home. It was a convertible I slept on, and the springs of the convertible were practically popping through the mattress. My mother would put a blanket on top of it so it didn't pierce me. I looked inside and I said, what do I sleep on? I said, "You sleep on the ground in your sleeping bag." So and a poncho. So I was introduced to the fellow who was in that bunker. I was there. He remained about a week, and he rotated. The following morning when I came there, they took my rifle away, and they gave me a BAR. Now the BAR I saw in basic training perhaps 2 days, 3 days the most. I said, "What do I do with this?" And the fellow in my bunker said, "Look, whoever comes in here gets the BAR." So I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, you're the target. You have automatic fire. You're the target. That's why it's handed from one fellow to the other." So I said, "Gee, I better learn how to use this thing." And I learned how to use it. It was a good weapon. The only problem was you're living in a bunker and the magazines get dirty, and I had a couple of malfunctions with it. Well, anyway, we were on the line for about a month. As far as the action was concerned, we didn't have much action. I remember one night we were in the free lane. The free lanes were lanes you could walk through in order to get out into the going towards the enemy territory, because in front of our bunkers the entire area was mined, so you couldn't walk over the mines. So we had free lanes with barbed wire sort of showing the path. And the first night I was put in a foxhole with another fellow, and we were to guard the free lane, make sure the Chinese didn't come up there. And we received a phone call from the company commander saying that the platoon that was out there was hit, but we go out there and help them. So I told my buddy, this fellow Russell Wirt, "Look, Russ, I'm going to go out there and you stay here." I was scared out of my wits. So I ran out there, and they had Korean, they were called Katusas, Koreans attached to the U.S. Army. They were the litter bearers, and they were exhausted, and they just had a difficult time. And I ran over to the first litter, and there was a fellow lying on the litter with his leg over the side, and it was just like hanging on shreds, and he was twisting like a cutworm, and the medic ran over and gave him a shot of morphine, and he looked like he was in heaven after that, and I helped carry him back. Well, by the time I got back, this fellow, Russell, who was with me in the bunker, was so terrified, he was practically frozen. I said, "What's the matter, Russ?" He said his brother was killed in the Battle of the Bulge. He says he can't stand this, can't take it. So, anyway, we went back, and I found out that he was transferred to an honor guard in Seoul. And I remained with the company. It was about a month, and we went back into reserve, where we received replacements for the fellows who were wounded and who rotated. And we got a new company commander. The original company commander, we called him CP Black, Command Post Black. He never left his bunker. I never saw him. He always communicated by phone between the men who were out on patrol. Never knew who he was. This new fellow, he was an ex-paratrooper, very, very capable man, and he became our company commander. We went through very rigid training in the rear, and incidentally, I was court-martialed in the rear. I was assigned with this fellow, my buddy Charlie Kanikas, to put to knock fence posts around our area. And in the evening, I was asked to read a statement saying, "No one is to be found outside this area unless they're given permission." Well, Charlie Kanikas was also an ex-paratrooper, and about 2 days later he said, "Wolfe, I see that town over there. I think there are some very nice Korean ladies that want to see us there." And I said to him, "Charlie, we just put these posts in there. If they catch us past it, we'll be court-martialed." He says, "Don't worry," he says. "The most obvious way is the least suspected way." So, dark, we leave. He has a can of beer in his hand, and we're heading towards the village. And we see 3 silhouettes coming towards us. Turned out it was the officer of the day and 2 corporals. So as soon as I saw him, I just went head down the ground. I'm laying there, and I look up, and I see this fellow Charlie sitting down, and he's singing this Korean folk song, "Ari, ahang, Ari." I said, "Charlie, get that." Well, anyway, by that time, the flashlights were on us, and they, "What are you doing here, soldiers?" Couldn't say anything. He said, "All right, turn around and walk back to the camp." So I stopped and I said, "Sir, I wish you'd take into account that we were on the line for quite a while, and we just wanted a little recreation." So Charlie said, by this time he was pretty full of beer. He says, "Wolfe," he says, don't beg. He says, "There's one thing I can't stand is a beggar." I said, "Oh, God," I said, "Charlie, come on." So anyway, the officer said, "Keep on going." So we kept on going, and he took this can of beer, we were walking, and threw it over his head, and he said, "Look out, a grenade!" And the officer fell to the ground with the 2 corporals, and he said, "Ah, ha, ha." Well, the officer got up and said, I was going to let you guys go. He said, "But you're going to be court-martialed." So when we came back, he went to the company commander and told us what happened, and they put us in for a summary court-martial, which is the lowest form of court-martial. And within a few days, we were called to the battalion commander's tent. And we were sitting there, and I asked the sergeant, I said, where's the battalion commander? Where's Colonel Welch?" He says, "He's got the whistling GIs. He'll be here soon." I said, "What?" I said, "What's the whistling GIs?" He says, "Son, did you ever shit so fast your asshole whistled?" He says, anyway, he came, he was drained, and he court-martialed us. We couldn't be promoted for I don't know how long, and we couldn't change our allotment. That was the court-martial. And then we received a new platoon leader, a Lieutenant Boatner, who just graduated from West Point, a very, very proper guy. Meanwhile, the POWs at Kojido started a riot there, and they captured 2 generals. And the U.S. didn't know what to do. So they flew in a general who was familiar with the Chinese. He was on the Chinese mainland, a General Boatner. And General Boatner came there and he put down the riot. He straightened out the entire island. The island was just a mess as far as military discipline and all that. He straightened everything out. And then we got the word that we're going back up front. And a helicopter came down, and this little officer came out, turned out to be General Boatner. His son was our platoon leader. I think his name was William Boatner, I'm not sure. And his son went in the plane, into the helicopter, and they flew south. And I turned around to the guys, I said, hey, it's nice to have a papa in the business. And I didn't realize, though, that he was going, 45 years later, I met this man. He told me he was transferred to another battalion in which his father was in, and he wanted to be in the same battalion. He eventually ended up a general also. Anyway, we went to a blocking position because there was a Korean unit that was put on the front line. They didn't know, our U.S. government didn't know how effective they would be. So we were behind them, a few ridge lines behind them. And it was very nice. We were still sleeping on cots, but we were sleeping within a wooded area. And I remember a USO show came. And we were digging trenches. My arms were all full of mud. And they said, wash up, wash up. We're going to the USO show. So we went, we got on a truck and went to the USO show. And there was a comedian. Then there was a violinist, a beautiful girl in a shimmering blue gown, was playing the violin, and she was introduced as Rima Rudina. One of the guys yelled out, "Hey, I'd like to Rima!" So we were sitting there for a while, and after the show, there was an accordionist, an elderly woman who thought she was Miss America, and she was playing, I remember, A Guy is a Guy. I walked down the street like a good girl. She was playing that on the accordion, and after it was over, the MC of the show said, "Where are you from, Olga?" She says, "I'm from the Bronx." So they said, "Is anyone here from the Bronx?" So I said, "Yeah." So there were 3 or 4 of us, and Stars and Stripes wanted a picture of us. So the photographer said, "Hey, get a little closer." I didn't realize my arms were all muddy. As I got close and I put my arm around her, and she took a look at his shoulder. She said, "Oh, get him away, he's impossible." So I said, "Hey, I'm quite possible if you'd only try me." Well, the major just went out of his mind. He said, "These people came all the way from the United States to entertain you, and you talk to them like that?" "Well, I'm sorry, sir." Anyway, a few days later, got word to go up to the front line, and this was really hell. By the way, I didn't mention the fact that this was World War I. We were living in bunkers and going out. Nearly all the action was at night. So we went off into the darkness. We were stationed overlooking the Imjin River. It would be similar to looking from New York at New Jersey, only the river was about 1/4 the width of the Hudson River. And opposite us were our outposts, Little Nori, Big Nori, then there was the Bubble. And we would, in order to go on our patrols or raids, we would go across the river on in little John boats, and we'd pull ourselves across on a rope that the engineers put up, 2 posts at each end, and the rope was connected to it, and we'd pull ourselves across the river. The Chinese, who were excellent at mortars, had what they called VT mortar rounds, variable VF, variable fuse. They were able to set the mortar off at any height they wanted to. You didn't have to impact to go off. And quite often they'd send the mortar rounds over and tear the rope, and the engineers would come up and put the rope up. Now, the first memorable patrol was a patrol where we were going to a hill called Hill 117, which was taking us across the river and then going up through our outposts and on to Hill 117. Now, my buddy Charlie always volunteered to be the point man. By this time, I had given my BAR to a fellow named Gus. Where is he now? Gus, oh God, I forgot his last name. Gus, and I was the runner for the squad, platoon. In other words, the walkie-talkies weren't effective at all in mountainous area. So Charlie, the point man, would go, according to the terrain, would be about 10 to 15 yards in front of us, and our platoon leader would tell me what he wanted Charlie to do, and I would run to Charlie and tell him what to do, and that is how I worked. So we went out, then we went past the Nori, our own outpost, and we kept on going, and we were about maybe a mile out, and I crawled over to Charlie to find out what was going on. And Charlie said, I just passed a listening post, a gook listening post. I said, how do you know? He says, smell. He says, don't you smell it? I smelled it. It was heavy garlic. And as I wrote in my story, he says, they're shitting like we are. They're breathing heavy. Oh, God. So I crawled back to our platoon leader, Lieutenant Thies, and I said, Charlie said he just flushed the listening post. He says, go back to him and tell him to go 10 yards, another 10 yards, and we'll catch up to him. I came back to Charlie, and Charlie said, what did he say? What did he say? He was very nervous. I said, he said, go 10 yards and we'll catch up to you. Well, by the time we caught up to him, we were blasted. They had us in an ambush, and we could tell by the flashes that we were encircled. Behind us was the river, sort of almost a cliff and a river, and they were in front of us. We were within this group, and they were firing away, and I was so frightened. I just held I just couldn't fire. And our company commander, God bless him, I hear, we're going to get you, you bastards. And I took a look, and from the flashes, I saw him standing up, yelling at the Chinese. And then he came back, and he was calling us by name. He says, come on. He says, fire, fire. And it sort of loosened me up. And I started firing. I took 2 grenades. I threw my grenades. And, you know, when the Chinese are there, it's their position. They have unlimited ammo. We just came with a certain amount of ammo. So he told us to withdraw. But instead of going back the way we came, he said, go down the slope. It was almost like a cliff, and we'll wade back in the river. So the fellows started going back, and one of the guys, Poodles, from another platoon, came over to me. He says, Massengel's laying over there. Massengel's laying over there. And he had about 4 rifles. He picked up the rifles of the fellows who were wounded and killed and maybe dropped their rifles. I said, get rid of his rifles. Give me a hand. And he gave out a yell, supply economy, and he ran off and ran down. Supply economy was a movie they showed us in basic training where you should take care of your weapons. And he ran off down the cliff. What am I going to do? Well, anyway, Sid, our company commander, was standing watching the fellas go by, and he says, "Go ahead, Wolf. I'll cover you." So I crawled over to Massingale. He was laying there. He was a sergeant. He was laying there. There was no movement. And I grabbed him by the collar and I crawled and pulled him with me. By this time, Lieutenant Sidney, our company commander, was down, but this other sergeant, Benny Hoover, was there. He said, "Come on with me." And I pulled Massingale down the slope, but there were so many bushes, it was very difficult. So I stopped and I said, "Hey, is he alive? Is he dead?" And I pinched him, and nothing. So I kept him, and it was just very difficult to pull him, so I took my red belt off and put him around his knees, and I lifted him up over the bushes as we went down the hill. And meanwhile, we received fire from the left. And Benny got up. He was a World War II vet, and emptied his M1 in the area, and that was the end of the fire. And we finally got to the river, and I floated Massingale on his back, and I was going backwards. Fortunately, we were going with the river, so the movement was very easy, and we were getting burp gun fire down. It looked like little raindrops. Anyway, we eventually got to the place where those little John boats and the rope was, and Benny and I put Massingale in the boat. We pulled ourselves across, and we left Massingale with the medics, and we didn't know what. I assumed he was dead, and we returned to battalion headquarters. There were trucks waiting, and they asked us what we could do. So what could we do? What could we do better next time? What did you see? How many? I didn't see anything. It was dark. Anyway, we went back, and it was horrible. My bunker buddy was the medic, Wayne Caton. He was a very heroic fellow. He took care of the wounded and all that. And 4 days later, we get another order that we're going to hit Hill 121, which was in a different direction, was out in a valley straight in front of us. So out we went again, and I was the runner again, and they didn't need me again because it was very flat and they could communicate very easily with one another. But this time we had a British tank which was used as an artillery piece, direct fire artillery piece. So the British tank was on our side of the river, and their mission was to hit Hill 121, which was about a half a mile, maybe a mile straight ahead, and Hill 121 was going to get artillery and heavy mortars. So we went out and we went across the river and we assembled before the attack, and the bombing was so intense that my pants vibrated, and the vibrations went off my vest and just hit my face. My cheeks were trembling. There was such heavy bombardment. But while this was going on, it was the craziest thing. I was so frightened, and after it sort of was like a relief, a catharsis. And we went out, and we went towards Hill 121. What they didn't tell us was there were concentric trenches in the hill, very deep trenches that the Chinese dug. So when the bombardment hit them, they were pretty well protected. And then they had a firing step. My job was, once we got to the hill, I had a grenade launcher. Sergeant Flaherty, I remember, showed me how to put the grenade launcher on. I never used it before. And a grenade was put on there, which was going to be sent up in the air as a signal to artillery to cease fire, the tanks to cease fire, because we were going into the attack. Incidentally, we practiced this in the rear a couple of days before. Anyway, I was told not to close my eyes when I pull the trigger because a gigantic flash comes out of the trigger housing. Well, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled the trigger and I had my eyes open. Tremendous flash came out, and every time I blinked, it was like a flash bulb went off in my eyes. And anyway, we started going up, and I saw my buddy Wayne on the side of me with Flaherty, and I waved to him, and we went up into the attack. And I fell into one of the trenches. I hit my head. It didn't hurt, but I hit my head against the trench, and my helmet fell off. And I crawled back up, and I got up, and I said, gee, where's Wayne? Where's Wayne Caton? Where's Flaherty? I caught up, and I saw Flaherty on my left, and then a tremendous concussion grenade went off near Flaherty. And we were firing in the two grenades, and we were ordered to withdraw. As I withdrew, I saw these Katusas, these Koreans, carrying Flaherty. His jaw was just like a wet sock on his chest. It was just lying there. And I ran back, and I saw Ed Heaster carrying Truman Baston, gushing blood, and we were running back to our lines. I said, where's Wayne? Where's Wayne? Didn't see him. Anyway, we got across the river, and we went back. Trucks were waiting again, took us to battalion headquarters, and they asked us what happened, and we told them what we knew about it, and we were sitting around, and another truck of men came back, and I said, hey, did you see Wayne? And they said, he's probably on the next truck. No, we didn't see him. Anyway, there was no next truck. So we sat around, waited. We waited until dawn, and he didn't come, and I went back to my bunker, and anyway, Wayne was declared missing in action, and 3 years later, he was declared KIA. That was that. And I could tell you of another incident where two men from our platoon, we were always told to stay in the trenches. These two guys were talking to one another, and a bullet went right through Harry Lappick, I remember, and Sergeant Faustine Rutledge's head. They were both killed. And battalion assumed it was a sniper. And they thought the sniper was on our side. So we went on a skunk hunt, couldn't find anything. Then battalion said, on the other side of the river, near Hill 117, they could see a bunker. And they think that bunker was being used by these snipers. At night, they'd leave. Our platoon was ordered to eliminate that bunker. So we gathered around our Lieutenant Thies, and he said, we're going to get rid of that bunker with a bunker bomb. We turned around. I said, what's a bunker bomb? I asked Charlie, because Charlie knew everything. I said, what's a bunker bomb? He says, you'll find out. So anyway, it turned out a bunker bomb was a pole about, I'd say 4 feet long, and at the end of the bunker, at the end of the pole was an empty 30 caliber machine gun canister that was filled halfway with napalm, and connected on the side to the canister was a white phosphorus grenade. And the point was, you pull the pin on the white phosphorus grenade and stick the bunker bomb into the bunker. So we sat around, and he's telling us we were picked for this, and we're going to go up the river. We're going to wade up the river on our side. The men on our side were going to be told that we're coming along the river. And then there was a bend in the river where there was a sandbar. We were going to walk across the sandbar and go up the slope to the bunker. So I said to Lieutenant Thies, why why don't they just blast the bunker from our side with a 50 caliber machine gun or a recoilless rifle? He said, well, this is what we're ordered to do, and this is what we do. Next thing I was worried about is, who's going to carry that bunker bomb? And I knew that they didn't need a runner for this operation, and sure enough, it was my job to carry the bunker bomb. So we started wading up the river, and Charlie Kanikas was 6'2". I was 5'7". As we were going up the river, from the knees, the water from the knees started moving up towards our chest. And I was carrying the bunker bomb this high, and Gus had his BAR. He was carrying it above his head. I said, if this gets any deeper, I'm going to turn around and go back. And then we heard bursts, and Charlie came running back to Lieutenant Thies and said, those idiots up there threw 2 grenades at me. Lieutenant Thies said, well, that's it. We're going back. I could have kissed him right on the spot. And we turned around and we went back, and we sat for a while waiting for the trucks to come. And Lieutenant Thies was sitting there, and he started laughing. It was sort of like a pathological laugh. He was laughing. I said, oh God, this doesn't look good. And we got on the truck, and he got on the truck. We went back to battalion headquarters and told him what happened. And that was the end of Lieutenant. I didn't see Lieutenant Thies after that. Then a few days later, someone from Chemical Corps came to ask how effective the bunker bomb was, and told him what happened. And he left, and that was sort of the end of my story. However, I was on the line for about 6 months, and then I was an order came down that some men, veterans, can go to Japan if they wish. And I didn't know what to do, because I had 31 points, 36 points, and you could rotate. You got, I think, 3 or 4 points for every month you were online. And I had 31 points accumulated from the time I first came to Korea. And I didn't know what to do, and I went to my new platoon leader, Crow, Lieutenant Crow. And I said, I don't know what to do. Another month, a month and a half, and I could go home. He said to me, if you were my son, I'd tell you to go to Japan. And that's what I did. I went to Japan, where we were training to invade Korea. But, these were green fellows, so they needed veterans with them to sort of orient them as to what to expect. So we trained to invade Korea, but the invasion never occurred. As you probably know, the peace talks at Parmesan finally came to an end, and there was a ceasefire declared. And I came home. I came home to parents who seemed to have aged tremendously, and I went back to the candy store. The candy store was our hangout, and some fellow that I didn't know asked me, were you in combat? I said, yeah, I was in combat. So this fellow said, uh-oh, I better get my helmet. After I heard that, I didn't discuss this. I never, ever spoke about it to my wife, to my children. I was a teacher for 35 years. I went to college after I went out of the Army. I was a teacher for 35 years in New York City. And after I retired, I moved to Florida. And my younger son passed away. And I was really in a state of deep, deep depression. and I got a phone call. I said, "Who is this?" He says, "It's Flaherty, you idiot." I said, "Flaherty?" He says, "Yeah, Sergeant Flaherty." I said, "God, how'd you find me?" Sergeant Flaherty went on to Vietnam. He went in the Special Forces. I don't know, he had some pull, and he received all the morning reports of the days that we were in Korea. A morning report tells you who was there at the company on that day. And he looked up all the names and followed through and found the names and addresses of all the fellows who were in our company at that time. And he got a people finder also. And he was able to gather something like 83 men who were with us in Korea. And he said, "I remember," he said, "when you were in reserve, you used to help the fellows write letters to their girlfriends." He said, "Look," by the way, he lived in Orlando and I lived south of him. He says, "Let's meet and we could talk it over." So we met, and he said he'd like to have a newsletter sent out, get the guys together, maybe we'll have a reunion. So I wrote a newsletter, and within maybe 6 months, we had a reunion at Fort Stewart, Georgia. It was an incredible event. Now, as I said, I never ever spoke about this to my children, but here we were, a bunch of old guys meeting for the first time, and Charlie Kanekis was there. He went on to Vietnam. He was just a shadow of himself. He couldn't remember anything. He was hit with Agent Orange twice, had lung cancer. Flaherty was going to be there, but he had a heart attack. So, but our company commander was there, Sid Sidney was there, and his fellow Ed Heaster was there. And we were in this reception room, hospitality room, and reminding ourselves of all the old things. And then someone came to the door. No one recognized him except this fellow Ed Heaster. He ran over and threw his arms around him. They both hugged. This was the guy that Ed Heaster was carrying when we withdrew from Hill 121, gushing blood. Teeth were coming out of his mouth. He had a glass eye. He had a steel plate in his head. He had a reconstructed jaw with false teeth in it. And he was the most up guy. And when he said he was Truman Baston, I don't think there was a dry eye in the place. Everyone, my wife also was crying. It was a tremendous reunion. And ever since then, which was about 7 years ago, we meet every year. This year we didn't meet because Fort Benning, the 3rd Division, Fort Benning, which I was in, is in Kuwait. So we didn't meet there. But we're going to meet again this year. And that is my story. What I meant to say, what I meant to add was that at this reunion, these fellows who had the Silver Star and Bronze Star had little enamel pins in their lapels. And my company commander came over and he said, "Hey, Wolfe, where's your Silver Star?" I said, "What Silver Star? I didn't know what you're talking about." And he said, "I put you in for the Silver Star." I said, "Well, I never got it." He said, "I'm going to write you up again." I said, "Do you remember what happened?" He says, "I have it all." And he showed me the documents eventually that he had. What happened was the documents were in a Jeep, and the 2 Jeeps were blasted by the Chinese. And by the way, by the time we were fighting, this was 1952, the Korean Army was wiped out. It was the Chinese that were in front of. They were excellent at mortars. They just destroyed the Jeeps. So he put in the Silver Star. He put me in for a Silver Star again, and I was awarded the Bronze Star at the University of North Carolina. It was a very nice ceremony there. And
What was the action that he put you in?
Oh, for crawling over to Sergeant Massingale. The fire was coming and dragging him.
Did you ever find out what happened to him?
He was dead. Yeah, he was dead.
What were your relations with the Republic of Korea Army, the soldiers?
Well, the only relation we had were with these men called Katusas. They were our litter bearers. Sometimes the relations were good and sometimes it was bad. They had I don't know if he was an officer or a sergeant who had a stick. He would beat the daylights out of them mercilessly. But we were on this outpost Nori once, and one of the fellows received bad shrapnel from a mortar on his rear end and his leg, and he had to be evacuated. And so the Katusas were called, and the mortar rounds were coming in. One of the Katusas was so frightened, he just stood there, paralyzed. And Sergeant Benny Hoover went over to him and he said, pick up the litter, and he just couldn't do it. Sergeant Hoover took out his .45. I said, pick up. He wouldn't do it. He shot him right there. He spun around and fell down. But we had no contact with the Republic of Korea. It was a diversified army. The Belgians were attached to us. What other units? The Greeks were connected, but they were individual units. We had no contact with the Koreans.
How about with the population?
Population weren't allowed near us. But when we were in the rear, we did see them.
How about with blacks in the military? This was
that's a good point. In fact, I brought it out in my story. This was the first time that blacks were integrated into the U.S. Army with the whites. So when we went back into reserve, we needed replacements. So a truck came in with mostly black soldiers, and they came into our unit. Just like the white guys, some of them were very good and some of them were not. But we had very, very good relation. There was no friction at all, no problem.
How about the relief of MacArthur? What was your reaction to that?
I didn't know about it. We hardly got Stars and Stripes, but I read about it after. And the things that he wanted to do could have started World War III. He wanted to use atom bombs. He wanted to put atom wastes into the rivers. So I was kind of, after, in retrospect, I thought that Truman was a pretty brave guy to get rid of this hero.
How about the election of Eisenhower? How did you feel about that?
Eisenhower, I left Korea 2 months before Eisenhower came there. So this was the first time I voted, and I didn't know who to vote for. And I think I voted for Stevenson. I don't remember who I voted for.
You don't have to tell us your voting record.
Yeah, but Eisenhower was a hero, and Stephen was, in retrospect, I didn't know he was an intellectual. I don't know what would have happened, but Eisenhower promised to bring the boys back, and he did. And incidentally, when the boys came back, the fellows who were prisoners of war from the East were sent to Valley Forge General Hospital in Pennsylvania. And I kept in touch with Wayne, my bunker buddy's family, and the mother had about 100 photos printed of him, and she sent it to Valley Forge General Hospital to find out if any of the fellows there saw him in a prison of war camp. They didn't see him there. And as I said, 3 years later, he was declared KIA. His brother was asked to submit DNA. He wouldn't do it. I don't know why. Yeah.
Did you join any veterans organizations on your?
Did I join any veterans organizations? No, we have our own. It's called the, well, it originally was called the Company L Veterans. But after our company commander died, we became a post. It was called the Colonel, he became a colonel eventually. He retired Colonel Wilbur Sidney Outpost 52. And that's the group that we have. Yeah.
And of course, you said you kept contact. Now you keep contact.
Oh yeah. I write the newsletter for our group. Yeah.
Okay. Oh yes. Wanted you to show us your things that you brought.
Yeah. I brought a camera with me to Korea.
Okay, I'm getting glare if you can hold it.
How's this?
Let me just move the camera. That'll be good and I can zoom in. Okay, well, you want to explain each picture?
Yeah, I brought a camera with me in Korea. After about a week in the bunker, it completely corroded. So some of the pictures were with that camera. For example, this picture was when I first came up there.
Now, which one is you?
I'm on the left.
Okay.
If you look closely, you'll see that there's hardly any vegetation there. It's we went to get water from the stream, which we didn't drink. We drank from Lister bags, which had water that was purified by
Halazone?
with halazone, which tastes like iodine. It was horrible tasting, but this was my bunker here. I'm sorry. This was on the Outpost Mary, the first time I was online. And this was my bunker there. And once again, you can see the trees are completely denuded. This is the same outpost. I was there with this fellow, Oscar Connerth, who was wounded. He was the fellow that was taken off Nori. He was wounded in the rear end and the leg. This is Sergeant Flaherty, who I still keep in contact with. He was an ex-paratrooper. What happened was they took paratroopers and they integrated them into infantry units. This is Benny Hoover, and this is Dixon. He received wounds that were so bad he passed away after he got out of the Army.
Now, that center,
The center one was when we went back online. This was just before we went out on that raid on Hill 117, night that I brought Massingale back.
now which one?
No, I took this picture,
Oh, okay.
so I'm not in this.
Okay.
Yeah. This was another photo when we went back online. This is me. This is Sappington, one of the black guys. And gee, I don't know who this is. This is when we were in the rear. It's an interesting picture. This is myself. This guy is John Hollier. He was wounded, but not seriously. He got a piece of shrapnel across his spine. This is Brockett. He was okay. This is Wayne Caton, my bunker buddy, who was killed. This is Truman Baston. He was the one with the steel plate, the glass eye, and all that. And this is Oscar Connerth. He's the one who received the wounds to the rear and leg. This is before we went out on that raid on Hill 121. We went through a dry run in the rear, and this is my company commander, Sid, and this is the battalion commander, Welch. I think I went through all
Yes.
of that. Okay. Bronze Star that was awarded to me at the University of North Carolina.
I just want to get the whole thing.
Yeah. Do you want me to read what it said?
Sure, that might be easier.
Okay, should I do that now?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
Okay. The Bronze Star with V device, that's for valor, then Private First Class Army of the United States for heroism in the vicinity of Choco-ri, Korea on 8th August 1952 while serving as a rifleman in Company L, 15th Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division. During a firefight, Private First Class Wolfe became aware that a comrade had been hit by enemy fire. Volunteering and with utter disregard for his personal safety, he moved from his covered position across fire-swept terrain until he reached the soldier, only to find him dead. Determined to retrieve the body, he crawled through deadly enemy fire and dragged the body to a covered position, then single-handedly floated him to a collection point downstream. Private First Class Wolfe's outstanding heroism reflects great credit on him and the United States Army. So yeah.
That's nice.
Was there anything else?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, well, yes,
Oh, okay.
if you want the story, it may take a while, the story of the night I was awarded this.
Do you have a copy of that, or?
You
we
can
make-
have this.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
well, we'll just put that in our
Yeah.
file.
Yeah.
Okay, any other? Okay, well, thank you very much for your interview.
Well,
That was
thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. I was happy I was able to tell someone something about the Korean War, because whenever I hear about military campaigns, the Korean War seems to have not existed.